All right, so to give a little bit of an intro to what the hub is and what an academic advisor does, myself and 4 other advisors comprise the SOE School of Engineering First Year Hub. So for your first year on campus, we are your one-stop shop for all things academic. So if you have questions about major requirements, minor requirements, how to fit different things into your academic plans, like maybe study abroad or something like that, then we are always a good first place to stop, because even if we aren't the final person you need to talk to, we'll be able to direct you to who that may be. Also, there is a thing called a SAM hold. So once a year, you are required to meet with an advisor so you can register. So for your first year, as long as you stay in electrical and computer systems, that will be me. Then after that first year, you will transition to your faculty advisor. And basically the goal is, with our year together, we'll make sure you understand your requirements, how all of that comes together. That way you can spend your time with your faculty advisor talking about some of those higher order questions like research, potentially picking some of those upper level technical electives that maybe I wouldn't know a whole lot about because I was not an engineer. So that's kind of the model we have going on. And when in doubt, always feel free to reach out. Our full-time job is to be here to help, and we love to do it. So definitely always reach out to me if you need something. Now, basically, we're going to talk about both majors, but again, for the first year and really the first 3, electrical and computer systems have significant overlap. So I'm going to scroll through the electrical engineering registration guide, but again, all of this is really going to overlap with computer systems. So while I would highly recommend reading all of this because it really is just kind of a crash course in registration and academic policy at RPI, there are a couple of spots I want to highlight. So the first is the major template, and we're all going to be talking about this together in just a moment. But on both guides, when you scroll down, you will find a PDF that kind of gives you a nice 4-year map of the requirements you need to complete your major. Now, I would always tell people this is the guide, not the gospel. So a lot of this is flexible, and that is especially true for your department. Basically, this entire second year can be flipped back and forth. And again, electrical and computer systems is a big department, so you have the wonderful benefit of most classes being offered every semester. But definitely take a look through the guide for the major template, but don't feel like that's what you absolutely must follow your whole time. I don't think I know a single student who's done it 100% to the letter. And then one other thing I'll point out on the guide is don't ignore the footnotes. So it'll sometimes tell you very important things, like, for example, when there are alternates that are offered for a class. So for example, instead of Intro to ECSE, you could take IEA, which is down here. So definitely look at those as well. Then moving along, we got some general stuff to talk about schedule building, which again is something we're going to talk about more tonight. So I'm just going to skim past this. And then if you haven't spent a lot of time in section 3 and you have AP, IB, or transfer credits, especially if you have a lot of them, get to know this section well. It's really important to understand what you're coming in with in order to build the most effective schedule. So I would want to point out that especially if you're planning to bring in other college credits, so let's say you went to a high school that allowed you to take community college classes or something, definitely pay attention to the second half of this video especially, because there are a couple steps to make sure those transfer effectively. And probably the last big highlight in here, and again, I still would love you to read the whole thing, you will have general education requirements here, and we call those the HOS core, which stands for Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. So compared to many institutions, you do not have to take that many HOS classes. Generally speaking, it is 5, you need 20 credits, but the specifics of what you need can be a little tricky. So definitely watch this video and look through all the information on HOS's website, and Marie will be dropping some links to that at some point in the chat. And if you have questions, let me know, because that's probably one of the hardest parts of your degree planning, honestly. So again, definitely look through your orientation guides if you haven't already. Again, this is going to be the same for both majors. Computer systems, your template is in your guide as well. So with that being said, we're going to move on to looking at your templates specifically. So give me a moment as I switch what my screen is sharing. All right, so just make sure we're on the correct tab. All right, so I'm going to do a quick run through of the templates. I will talk about both, but again, the vast majority of this is going to overlap. So I'm just going to highlight one or two differences between the two, but again, everything you guys do is the same for the first year or so. All right, so let's get this full screen. And let's zoom in a little bit because that looks a little small on my end. All right, so this is computer and systems. And again, this is going to be very similar for electrical. So regardless of which major you are, if you don't have credit for computer science 1, that's a definite. Ooh, big feedback. Please make sure you're muted if you're not already. Then moving along, if you saw the video in the registration guide, you'll have heard this spiel, but it can't be said enough. So moving on to this next class, Intro to ECSE. So a couple things I want to mention. First of all, that course is offered both in the fall and in the spring, and it's the department's intention that half of you will take it in the fall and half will take it in the spring. So please do not panic if something happens where you planned it to be in it and it gets full for the semester. No worries, some of that is by design. So again, no worries if it's not this fall. Also, this class is only accepted for electrical and computer systems majors as a major requirement. So if you were to switch, let's say, to mechanical, and you had already taken ECSE 1010, this would move to what is called a free elective. Every engineering major has 12 credits of those. Now, there is a more general version of this course called Intro to Engineering Analysis, or IEA, which is Engineering 1100. So generally, my advice is ECSE 1010 is great for two ends of a spectrum. So one is you feel very confident in your major and you want to jump right in, get that hands-on experience. But also, if you picked electrical or computer systems because it kind of sounded interesting, but you honestly don't know how you feel about it and you want to have that more targeted class to find out, that's totally valid as well. So those would be some good reasons to take ECSE 1010. But I would say if you're feeling really unsure, then I would either move physics up, because don't let the fact that it's in the sophomore year fool you. A lot of people take this first year. So I would say if you're not feeling so sure about this for fall, either move physics up or consider taking IEA. Now, final thing I'll say about this, if you do think you'd rather take IEA just to have the general class that could be applied towards any engineering major, this class is one where we see students do a lot better if they have a good physics background first. And I would say a good physics background is if you took something college level in high school, whether that's a community college class, IB, AP, because at other schools that class is called statics. So physics is definitely your friend. I would not give the same caveat to ECSE 1010 if you haven't had much of a physics background. That's all right. So then moving along, for both majors, you get the choice between engineering graphics and CAD or engineering communications. So for both majors, I highly recommend engineering communications. Both courses will teach you CAD, which is a design software. However, communications will switch to Microsoft Office halfway through and is a much easier class. And this is one of those cases where there is no reason for you to do something harder. Pretty much none of you will actually use CAD after you graduate. So that's one where I would say if you can, take communications. Save yourself the headache. Then looking at your math sequence, it's kind of pretty logical. So this tells you the order for the first year, and then if you have credit for both Calculus 1 and Calculus 2, you have the choice to take either differential equations or multivariable calculus. Now, if you get the preference, I always say to do differential equations first, reason being it's a prerequisite for circuits. However, you are welcome to do them in either order, and obviously you are ahead if you're taking one of those classes your first semester. So if you take multivariate first, that's also fine. And then let's see, last things we'll touch on the template. For the science elective here, both majors have it. Both majors accept the same classes. So Intro to Bio, Cell and Molecular Bio, which is Intro on hard mode, don't recommend, and Chemistry 1. So those are the most relevant things in your first year. For electricals, the main difference here is that you don't have to take data structures. So last thing I'll say about that, if you are a computer systems student and you have credit for Computer Science 1, data structures is hard. It is very hard. So I would say don't tackle it in your first semester, even if you have the prereq, unless you have prior experience coding in C++. And even then, like, maybe think about it for a minute. It's quite challenging. So if it's something you're considering, definitely let me know when we can talk about it. But just to touch back to electrical real quick, as you can see, basically all of this is the same, with electrical kind of focusing on getting physics in a little bit earlier. But again, everything is coinciding so far. So with that being said, we're now going to move into the planning sheets that I sent you all on Friday. So let me just switch to those. And again, these will be pretty similar, but I'll run through both and try to keep it quick because you'll have your Word doc for whichever major you're in. So basically, the point of this guide is for you to identify every possible class you could take in the fall semester. The goal for everyone is to take 16 or 17 credits if you end up throwing in the 1 credit engineering course. So you're going to have more options than just that many credits. So I want you to be able to know all of your backups so that if you go into registration, you're like, darn it, my first choice didn't work out, you know where to go from there. So first things first, for all majors, if you don't have computer science credit, lock that one in for first semester. You will definitely want that. Then moving on, ECSE 1010, again, I gave my whole spiel on that. It's a great option for first semester. If you're not going to take it first semester, then I would say probably my favorite option to move up would be Physics 1. You could also take IEA if you would prefer. Then math, we already touched on that, so the progression is here. Then for that Counter Communications class, for both majors, you can take that either fall or spring. So that's really a personal preference thing. You can do it whenever you want. And then here is the Haas course. So that's where I'll say definitely read the registration guide. There's a lot to be sorted through for Haas, and there are a lot of really cool options, but it would take me a long time to tell you all of them. So read your registration guide. Now, let's say you went ahead and you're thinking, okay, I want computer science, I want ECSE 1010, I have credit for Calc 1 and 2, so I'm going to take differential equations, I'm going to pick the Haas. Great, that's a full schedule. But if based on AP credit or some other decisions you've made, you don't have a full 16 credits at this point, keep on rolling. So again, if physics is a great one to move into your first semester, if you need to switch some things around. If you have credit for Physics 1, you are welcome to jump right to Physics 2. I will say that one is also known to be pretty challenging here at RPI. So it's what, like, if you feel good about electricity and magnetism, like let's say you took the exam and you got just below what you needed, but you feel like you know the content, go for it. But it is tough, so definitely think a little bit about making sure the rest of your schedule is balanced to your strengths. Then moving along, we have that science elective I showed you all before. And then I would say if you have a lot of AP credits is probably when you're getting down here looking for options. So if you have credit for Computer Science 1, there are 2 software level courses that become options. This one, ECSE 2610, is Computer Components and Operations, and Engineering 2350 is Embedded Control, or it is commonly said on campus to be LITEC, and Computer Components is called COCO. So if you have friends who go to RPI, you might have heard those terms. Last but not least, everyone has to take 12 credits of free electives. So this can really be just about anything. It could be more engineering, it could be math, it could be science, it could be more Haas, it could be management classes, because we have those here, surprise. So whatever you want to do in that realm is always a good fallback. So we've gone through computer systems, and then we'll just do a quick run through electrical. It'll be about the same. All right. So as you can see, the top is about the same, except obviously with electrical, there's really no need to consider whether or not you want to move on to data structures. And then moving on down, again, it's really pretty much the same. The one extra option electricals will have is your math or science elective, which is different from the science elective. They should come up with better names. But basically, this is a 4-credit requirement, and you either take a math class beyond what's on the template, or you take any 4-credit science course in astronomy, biology, chemistry, geology, or physics that wasn't fulfilling your science elective. So again, pretty much everything here is very similar. So with all that being said, now we're going to talk a little bit about how to build this. So we're gonna move over to ECSE. So, okay, so there's a great video in the registration guide on how to use this. So we're just going to make this a quick option. So let's say I wanted to pick Calculus 1. Some quick functionality things to learn. If you want to consider all sections of a class when making your schedule, just click the title. It'll highlight all of them. and then you can hit schedule to add it to the planning tool. If you want to be a little more selective, let's say we're doing physics, and let's say I'm a morning person, so I really want that 8 a.m. class, then I can hit schedule and it will just put that one into the scheduling tool, and you can click on more than one that way. So while I'm thinking of it, speaking of physics, one thing I would like you all to write down if you are considering taking Physics 1 in the fall is that there is an additional thing you need to register for to make it go through, and that is called the Physics Mentoring section. It is Physics 1960. So if we search it here, you'll see there's a ton of different sections, and basically this is your chance to meet one-on-one with an upperclassman each week. It's less than an hour, and it's just a really helpful way to go over the material you're struggling with, get some tips for studying in the exams, all that good stuff. So you have to sign up for the mentoring section if you sign up for Physics 1. They will not go through unless you put them together. So quick note there. So as you're going through ECSE, you will start to see certain schedules become impossible based on certain choices. So let's say I wanted to take this class. If your current schedule could not possibly work with the class you're looking at, you'll see this little red mark, which says conflicts with selected sections. So that's what that means. And then let's say you put in your schedule. Let me throw in another one or two things. All right, so let's say you put this together and you have 268 schedules. Obviously, that's not very efficient to go through. So generally, my recommendation for narrowing things down is to think about what type of learner you are and what's relevant to you. So let's say you are a person who really needs a little bit of a break between each class to digest what you just learned. This schedule probably would not be the move. You have a lot of back-to-back classes, and also as advisors, we just really would love if you had time for lunch and you don't in the schedule for some of your days. And then also you could think about, for example, for varsity athletics, sometimes students have to be done by 4 p.m. to be ready for practices. So if there's anything relevant in terms of your out-of-class life that you need to change your schedule for, then you could always just go through and start unselecting things that conflict with that, and that'll quickly start narrowing your options down. So that's the run-through of ECSE. If you want more of a step-by-step, refer to the video in the guide. Then now that we've talked about how to build a schedule, let's talk about how to register for one. So again, give me a moment to switch what we're sharing. Okay, so this is going to be a run through of how to register in SIS, and this is done from a student account, so you will be able to see what it'll look like on your end, because when I logged in on mine, it would look different. So when you log in, this will be what you see. So one thing everyone will need to do if they haven't already is clear their financial agreement hold. So you can do that at the financial aid menu. And basically, it's just the thing you have to click every semester that says, if I take classes, I will pay tuition. Once you do that, the hold is gone. So make sure you do that. And then after you have made your beautiful ECSE schedule, we would move along and go to the student menu. So once you're here, you can go to classes to look up classes, but that's generally not something you need to do much, so we're going to kind of do that part. But what you will need to do for registration is click on register, add, or drop. So when you go in there, you're going to need what are called CRNs. So let me bump back to this slide real quick. So the CRNs are these 5-digit codes that identify a certain section of a class. And if I go back to ECSE, you'll see that every section has its own. So once you have picked the CRNs for every course that you want to take, then you can type in all those CRNs at once on this screen. Now, as I mentioned before, there will be things like Physics 1, where there will be that mandatory component to take with it. So like Physics 1100 and Physics 1960 have to go together. If you plan to take a science elective and you choose biology, you have to register for Biology 1010 and Biology 1015 together, or else you're going to get an error message. So we always just recommend typing in all your CRNs at once. So you type them all in and hit Submit Changes. Then this is what will come up if it goes through. So if you see the status registered via web, then that means it's happened. You don't have to click save or anything like that. You're officially in the class. If it did not work out, you will see a little error message down here that tells you what's going on. And I know it can look kind of jarring, but generally they are pretty good at telling you what's wrong. So some common things you'll see are time conflicts. So if you accidentally wrote down 2 CRNs that are at the same time, it's not going to let you register for simultaneous classes. Another one is closed section. So when everyone's in there registering at once, occasionally a section of a course will close, in which case pick a different section. And then another one you might see is major restriction or field of study restriction. So this is more of a thing that might happen if you pick a really like niche Haas class. But a couple of classes in the Haas department are restricted to students of that major, so that might get you that error message. If that happens, you could try reaching out to the professor via email to see if they'd be willing to let you in. But in that moment, you should probably pick another Haas class as a backup, and then you could always work on that in the meantime. So let's see. And then if you want to see your schedule after you register, just make sure it looks like what you expected from ECSE. If you go back to the student menu and go to weekly schedule and daytime period, and make sure to type in a date from the semester. So it defaults to the week that it is. So if you were trying to check this for fall, maybe put in like September 20th, 2019, and it'll pull this up. So that's a good way to just check at the end, everything looks good. A lot of students will screenshot this and make it their phone background for the first week as they're learning their way around campus. So that can all be pretty helpful. So we already covered these details, but again, if you're taking biology or physics, make sure you put in that co-requisite at the same time. But in general, usually just submit all your CRNs together. And then final note is that ECSE is a great tool to build your schedule, but it's not always 100% up to date with the number of seats in SIS. So generally, build your schedule in ECSE, but the day of registration, just work in SIS because you want to have the most up-to-date information on seats. So that basically covers scheduling. Now, if you have trouble with your registration in terms of you got locked out of your SIS account, it happens more than you think, or you really can't figure out why an error message is coming up, like it says the section is closed, but when you go to the class search, it looks like it has space, then definitely reach out to the registrar's office. They handle all the mechanics of registration, and they're the ones who are going to be able to help you most efficiently. If you need help figuring out what classes to take, what to move around if Plan A doesn't work out, then that's something where you can reach out to me. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about just before we jump into the Q&A, which we're almost done, is that some people have already reached out asking about dual majors, which are very popular in your department. So if you would like to do a dual major, it is possible. So the common duals for electrical and computer systems students are, scrolling down, obviously electrical and computer systems together. As I mentioned, your curriculums overlap so much that it's really pretty manageable to do. You'll see it's only an extra like 7 credits from a typical single degree. Then moving along, I highly discourage the electrical and mechanical dual. This is a old template. The new one is over 150 credits. So that one is quite a bear. Don't recommend it. But electrical and computer systems is great. Also, computer systems and computer science is a great option. If you would like to do this dual, I would say definitely focus on your coding classes, because to qualify to add a dual in computer science, you have to get a B or better in data structures, that really hard class I mentioned before. If you don't, then they will look at your average between computer science 1, data structures, and foundations of computer science. If they average to a B, then it will go through. The last dual that's pretty common in your department that's not listed here because it got approved in the middle of the year was electrical engineering and applied physics. So these are very popular. I would say the vast majority, probably like 80 to 90% of my students don't do a dual, but they are out there. And many people ask, well, can I do a dual that's not in the template? And the answer is maybe yes, but also maybe yikes. So when you want to do a dual that's a little more, that's not as much of a beaten path, so to speak, there are 2 questions I always would want to ask you. One, is it feasible? So if the requirements don't overlap a lot, you really need to sit down and figure out how long will this take, or what will it take to get here? Am I going to have to take extra classes every summer? Am I going to have to overload all the time that I'm here? Am I willing to stay an extra year? The answer to that question really depends a lot on what dual you want to do and what types of transfer credit you may already have. So is it feasible is question 1, and is it practical is question 2. So some of these tell a very coherent story to a recruiter at the end of your time here. So for computer systems, computer science, you can say, I know how to work both the hardware and the software in something that I'm doing. Electrical and mechanical does not have a coherent story unless you want to go into mechatronics. So that's why I don't like that one so much. Electrical and computer systems, you could always say, I really enjoyed both. Maybe I was originally electrical, but I wanted to feel like I had a stronger grounding in coding and take a couple extra computer hardware classes. So if the dual that you're proposing is like electrical and chemical, big yikes. That'll probably take you a lot longer to do, and it probably wouldn't necessarily be worth your time. So my belief is that students should be able to do what they want. So if you have a dual kicking around in your head that you want to talk about, I am game to talk about it. Some that aren't listed here have worked well in the past, like math is usually not too bad. But again, we would definitely want to kind of project out what that would mean. All right, so now that we've kind of covered everything we had to cover, so to speak, it is Q&A time. So I will be opening the chat window in just a second here. All right, let me jump back to somewhere where the chat window will be a little bit bigger. And if not, I'll work with it. So let's see. Okay, no questions yet. So if you guys have questions, feel free to start typing them into the chat. Okay, first question. So if you're not 100% on ECSE, do you still recommend engineering communications over CAD? That's a really good one, and I haven't gotten that one before. So every department at RPI in engineering does accept both engineering CAD, engineering communications. So there's no way that you can get yourself stuck, so to speak. The only major where I would say like it's definitely measurably better to have taken CAD is if you're like waffling with a mechanical engineering and maybe even materials. But otherwise, we pretty much tell every other major just to take engineering 1400. But again, all departments accept both, so you're not going to get yourself stuck either way. Okay, next question is, can you explain a little bit more about Intro to ECSE, specifically about prerequisites? Good question. So the nice thing is there are no prerequisites. You can take it your first semester regardless of what credits you may have. And even for that other class, IEA, that might have been a little confusing how I mentioned it would be good to take physics first. Technically, IEA doesn't have any prerequisites either. You could take that one without having taken physics. That's just something we recommend. But I have no concerns about people taking ECSE their first semester, regardless of their background with math or physics. In terms of how the class works, it's kind of laboratory-based, so the professors really like you to get hands-on right away. It's taught by two of what I think are the rock star professors in ECSE. It's Professor Bronstein and Professor Hamid. They're really great guys and love working with students. So definitely a good class whenever you get to it. Good question. All right, if we took AP Computer Science A this year and aren't sure whether or not we got a 5, do you still recommend signing up for data structures first semester? So good question. Normally I tell people to run with the AP credit. This is the one situation where I would say err on the side of doing Computer Science 1 if you're unsure, because again, data structures is really hard, like really hard. And I know that because you all got into RPI, you're really smart, but all of the really smart people struggle in data structures. So I would say if you're not confident, sign up for Comp Sci 1, and if you're there in the first week and you're like, this is way too easy for me, then you have 2 weeks at the beginning of the semester called the add drop period, where you could always jump up a level in something or jump down. So don't stress about the decision too much, but with computer science, when in doubt, default away from data structures. Okay. Then I was thinking about doing the Eng MBA program. How would that factor in my template? Oh, good one. So just to explain for those who might not have heard of it before, RPI has this program called the Eng MBA, or Engineering to MBA program. And the way that works is if you are coming in and you're like, you know what, I really want to do 1 extra year here to get the MBA degree, then if you sign up for the program by the end of your first year, you attend seminars and such throughout your undergrad years, and then if you hit the end of junior year with a 3.0 and you participated in all the activities, then that means you would be automatically accepted. Now the thing is, it really doesn't actually factor into your template much until that fourth year when they start mixing in the business courses. Like, you don't even have to take Intro to Management, which I find surprising. So it's great that you know you want to get involved with that. I would definitely go to the webpage on RPI's website for it, because it'll give you contact people in the Lally School of Management who could give you more details. But weirdly enough, it actually really doesn't factor into your template at all for the first 2 years. So definitely nothing you need to worry about for your fall registration. And I see Marie has just dropped that link in. Awesome questions, guys. All right, what do co-requisites mean in the flow chart? I'm having a hard time following it when thinking of my schedule beyond first semester. Good question. So co-requisites are weird. So the definition of a co-requisite is it means you have to take 2 classes at the same time. So using that biology class I mentioned before as an example, if you want to take Intro to Biology, you have to sign up for Biology 1010 and 1015 at the same time. Now, Electrical and Computer Systems Engineering is a great department, but they are a little spotty with enforcing their co-requisites. So as you're looking at the flow chart, and I'm really glad you are, one that I don't want you to stress about is computer components and embedded control, or COCO and LITEC. Those used to be co-requisites. I think they're still great to take together, but they no longer enforce that. So you do not have to take those courses together. One co-requisite that is enforced as of now is Signals and Systems and Engineering Probability. So basically, for your first 2 years or so, there's not really going to be anything you have to worry about with co-requisites. And then for particularly the electricals in your 3rd year, you'll have the Signals and Systems and Engineering Probability one to think about. But by that point, a lot of people have kind of like normalized, equalized, and move more lockstep in the template. It's really the first 2 years that tend to scramble. And then, other than Physics 2 and data structures, are there any other notoriously difficult courses you're aware of that fall within electrical engineering or related majors? Good question. So I would say the 2 that you mentioned are probably the ones that I hear are the toughest, particularly data structures. The other one that will come up as kind of challenging at times in the first year or 2 is embedded control, or LITEC. Now, I find that class to be very divisive for people because it is a very hands-on class. So you're working with microprocessors, you're doing some coding. So I've heard it can be a heavy workload, but I have had students come to my desk and be like, this is my favorite class, this is so much fun, like this is why I'm here. And I've had students come to my desk like, oh God, please make it stop. So I would say embedded control can definitely be a little hit or miss on how you'll feel about it. But I would say those are probably the big 3 that I hear about in the first 2 years. And again, we're the first year hub, so I don't tend to hear as many stories beyond that. The only other one I'll mention is for electricals. Well, actually, all of you have to take it. Circuits is pretty challenging as well. But that one is not so much challenging because of like an relentless workload as much as it's really setting that foundation for your upper level courses, so it just has to be a bit robust. But by that point, you're usually more end of sophomore year, junior year, and you've got your academic chops together, so to speak. So usually people are feeling a bit better by then. Yay, look forward to meeting you too. Okay, what programming language is used at RPI? Good question. So computer science 1 here is Python, and then data structures is C++. Then when you move on to foundations of computer science, it's not a new coding language. It rather goes into like number theory and basically all the theoretical components behind coding. Obviously, there are classes you can take that will teach you other languages, but those are the ones you will definitely hit if you're computer systems, and everyone will take Python. So yeah, if you want to learn other things, we have classes for MATLAB. Everyone has to take at least some version of CAD, whether it's CAD or communications. But yeah, those would be the big ones, I'd say. Good questions, guys. Keep them coming. Oh, I might have missed one. Let me scroll back up. Oh, I did miss that. Where is that? Hold on, I missed a question about econ, but I'm not seeing it. Oh, okay, perfect. So there we go. Okay, sorry, I missed one, Nikhil. All right, so let's say, for instance, I take an econ course in the Haas. Can I take another econ course as well as the other requirement for the Haas elective 3rd year? Yeah, so the Haas is pretty flexible. So that's one part of your template where I would definitely say you can flex it. People take Haas courses at all times. Basically, not that you take one every semester, but some people really like to knock them out in their first 2 years. Some people take one their first semester to ease into things and then just save them for senior year. So timing isn't too crucial as long as you get that first year inquiry course done in your first year. And then if you're interested in taking more than one class in a department, I would definitely check out the Haas Pathways. I believe Marie dropped the link higher up in the chat, and that's where you will take 3 courses in a certain focus area. So sometimes it's just in one department like economics. Sometimes it's something like health and wellness where it'll cut across a lot of departments. So that definitely gives you the chance to get a little more deep into something you really enjoy. Perfect. So sorry for missing that before. Then the next one I see is any news on when we might get housing announcements, because there's a health contact form. Good question. We don't have any jurisdiction over that. So I would say reach out to the Office of Student Living and Learning. They would be the ones who would know. I wish I had a better answer for that, but we have no visibility to any of that stuff for any of you guys, unfortunately. Okay, and then will the mobile computing program always cover software needed for classes? That's also a good question. Let me see if I can find an answer real quick. I know who you could talk to. So as a side note, this is often what I will do if I don't know the answer to a question you all have. I will always at least try to look. So let's see. Program benefits for software. Okay. So I think generally, from my understanding, the mobile computing program will generally cover everything you need. And there will also be things you can do through free campus downloads. Whenever you need to have like things downloaded or fixed with your computer, we have a computing center here. It's actually really cool. It's like in this old church. It's right outside my window. So I think it should generally cover everything you need. And if you ever have any more specific questions, you could always reach out to the VCC, the Computing Center. Then, does it sound reasonable to do a dual major and a co-term simultaneously and still finish within 5 years? Oops, sorry, some things jumped around. I plan to dual major, those things. Okay, so I would say in the case that this person mentioned, computer science and CSE, it could definitely be possible to do a dual and a co-term in 5 years. And since I realize not everyone might know, what the co-terminal program is, it's a program at RPI where, again, you would stay 1 extra year for a master's. In this case, it would be in an engineering discipline. You would apply after you have 90 credits. So with a dual like that, where it really does fit comfortably into 4 years, regardless of AP credit, then I would say, yeah, 100% feasible to do in 5. If you're talking about a different dual that has some more credits, maybe not, but that one would work, especially since, Thomas, you mentioned you have a lot of AP credit. I think we could definitely make that feasible. All right, so let's keep scrolling. Oh, and then Marie put in a note in case some folks didn't see, but Marie is off to my side. She is the manager of the hub. She is wonderful, and she's been here for 17 years and has never heard a student complain about having to pay for software. So I think that's a good sign that you'll have everything you need. Awesome. All right, awesome questions. Anything else, anybody? You have like another 10 seconds in case someone's typing something long. Ooh, good question. Okay. Do co-term degrees add courses taken before the 5th year or just 6,000 levels instead of 4,000? So when you apply for a co-term program, part of the application is you meet with someone in that department and create a plan of study. So it can get a little fuzzy. Some people won't take any 6,000 level classes before that 5th year, and some people do. Like you can, as a senior, sometimes take those graduate level courses. That's what a 6,000 level class is. So that's kind of a fuzzy answer. It really depends on the plan of study you make with a department, and every department does things a little differently. I think ECSE, it tends to be a bit flexible on 6,000 level courses for seniors. Good question. Anything else? No problem. Am I exempt from ARCH since I plan to serve in the Army Reserve and do ROTC, and would this destroy my sleep life with a co-term and a dual major? Well, if you're in the ROTC, regardless of your academic plans, sleep's hard. So definitely prioritize getting a regular bedtime. Now, let me look that up. I want to say yes, but I don't want to say yes and be wrong. So All right, let's see. On this general information page, so let's just give it a moment. Oh, there we go. All right. Okay, so I think the reason I was fuzzy, and I think this is kind of corroborating that, is that I believe some ROTC groups are exempt, but I don't know that all are. I don't remember the divisions between Army, Navy, things like that. So definitely ask your commander; they will know. It's already in process for this current class. So definitely check with them. And then again, even though I joked about yes, you have to get up early, sleeping's hard, but at the same time, students do it, they do well, and a lot of them really enjoy it. So definitely lean on the upperclassmen for some advice there. Let's see, jump into questions. All right. So would I have the opportunity to skip Arch if I get a summer internship and I'm willing to be behind? So I can speak from the perspective of this past year. The program is new, so some things have been changing along the way. So I guess take everything with a grain of salt. We all have. As of this year, there has been an exception process, which you can actually see on my screen. So in some cases, or in many cases, when students were granted internship opportunities for the summer, they put themselves through the exception process, and generally RPI wants students to take advantage of these wonderful things. So that, as of now, has been a way to get exceptions. I don't have any knowledge as to whether or not that will change, but as of now, yes, that can work. On a general level, are dual majors in completely different fields a bad idea? On a general level, again, I hate to be in case engineering and music. So bad idea really just kind of depends on like what's the goal of it, why you're doing it. So I would imagine in this case, like engineering and music, it's because music's something you really enjoy. So I would say where I start getting more iffy with duals in totally different fields is if it's going to make you have to stay here a lot longer. So if you have to take like another extra year, 2 years to fill that dual, then this starts to be the question of, okay, is it worth your time? Is it worth the extra tuition money? But if it's something you can fit in and it makes you happy, then I'm all for it. And that also can be a really cool story to tell. Like, how many duals are there in engineering and music? That'll make you stand out, right? Okay, which courses are more difficult between AP Calculus, BC, and Math 10, 10, 10, 20? Okay, so actually, let me see if I can find on my computer one of the documents about this, because we have found historically that students who take their AP credit and run with it do really well. I know that I have, let's see, AP credit. All right, I might not be able to find it, but when we've looked historically, students do very, very well when they run with their AP credits, especially in math where you didn't think, as long as you didn't get your score and you were like literally have no clue how that happened. I think when they ran the numbers of over 100 students, more than 80% of students who went on to differential equations or multivariable got a B or better. So again, if you feel like you did well in your class and you weren't surprised that you got the credits you got, then I would say roll with it, and we could always step down during that add drop if it seems too challenging. Okay, and then Marie threw in a great note about duals. Awesome. Any other questions? Again, I'll give a little bit of time in case someone's typing. We had a lot of birds chirping outside the window. I don't know if you guys can hear. All right, well, I'll give 5 final seconds. 5, Oh, one more. Okay. So would you say it's better to take Intro to DiffEq before multivariate because I don't know which is better to take first? Good question. So I would say content-wise, it doesn't really matter. For both of them, the prerequisite is Calculus 2. I would say from a degree planning standpoint for these two majors, it's better if you can do differential equations first because it is a prerequisite for circuits, which becomes a prerequisite for like all of your upper level classes. Now, obviously, if this is a question you're asking about taking in your first semester, either way, you're ahead, so it's really not a huge deal. But I would say it's always great if you could get DiffEq in early, but multivariate is more than fine as well. Both are, I never really hear that you need to take one before the other for content comfort. They usually tend to go pretty well. Okay. Anything else? Again, I'll count down in case someone's typing. Okay. Well, if you all have any other questions, you have in so many ways gotten my contact information through email, phone, all of it works. So if you have any questions, whether they're general or just really specific to your situation, I'm always happy to help. Always feel free to reach out. I am extremely fast with email. So again, I am so excited to meet all of you. I hope you have a great rest of your summer or a great rest of high school. If some of you are still in it, I'm sure you are. And again, always feel free to reach out, and I can't wait to meet you at orientation. All right, stop the recording.